This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Berges.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're talking live here, and this is going to be a lot of fun on our live stream today, because today on our live stream, we're going to be talking about walking on eggshells. And I think many of you have experienced this, walking on eggshells and dealing with negative behavior. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why we walk on eggshells and how we usually deal with negative behavior, especially when it comes from a family member, a really, really close friend, right? Or somebody we're dating, living with, or married to, okay? Because it's funny how we rarely deal with this type of behavior when it's someone that's not that close to us. Usually we let those people go. We're quick to jump out of that relationship and we move on. But the closer they are in our lives, right, we feel like we're going to try to make this work. It's family or what have you, so we're going to try to make it work. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about walking on eggshells. I want to talk about dealing with negative behavior. I want to talk about what constitutes negative behavior. So we're going to be talking about that. What is negative behavior? Because sometimes we don't know, okay? And sometimes we've been around it so much, right? We've been around the negative behavior so much that we don't really realize that it's negative behavior. It's just status quo, okay? It's just what we're used to. And so I want to talk about the negative behavior. I want to also address how we usually handle it. So how do we usually handle this behavior? I want to talk about that, because what happens is we handle this behavior in a specific way, okay? And it's not the right way, it's not the appropriate way, but it's the way that we've always done it, okay? And so we're going to talk about that. I'm not blaming anybody. Nobody's getting blamed. There is no judgment. This is a judgment-free zone, but I'm going to be elaborating on that as well. And then later on, we're going to be talking about how to handle this type of behavior to get the best situation to come to fruition. So we have a lot on our plate tonight. Hopefully you're liking the show and you're tuning in. I know that for some of you, it's dinner time. For some of you, it's early morning. But either way, glad to have you. Thanks for participating. If you have already subscribed to the channel, I really appreciate it. And also, throughout the videos, any videos that really helps you, if you don't mind liking those videos and also sharing it with family and friends that you think might get something out of it, because it takes a village, right? It takes a village to learn and to grow. And if you have some knowledge that someone else needs, I'm sure they really want it, and vice versa. So, you know, do what you want to have done to you, and it's all good. And I know that we're in a very positive environment here. Everybody in our community is very positive and wants to help other people. So when I return, I'll be talking about that, about ways of making changes, but also we're going to begin with what constitutes negative behavior. So guess what? Ashley Berges will be back in just a couple of shakes.
Hi, my name is Reginald Harvey, and I'm a wellness champion. I just published the medical memoir Anatomy of a Patient to inspire those affected directly or indirectly by a life-threatening diagnosis. Do you know or have a family member or dear friend who is suffering from catastrophic illness or debilitating disability? This is a conversation that few people are willing to have, and I want to have it with you. You can hear me on Live Your True Life Perspectives with Ashley Berges. For more information, go to reggieharvey.net.
Are you currently in a toxic relationship and unsure what the next day will bring? Have you often wondered if there's more to life than this? Do you suffer from self-esteem issues that you've had since you were a young child? Have issues or have difficulty speaking with your family? Do you feel surrounded by self-centered people? Seems as though you're always giving and they're always taking. If you've answered yes to any of these questions, you need some answers. The 10-day challenge to live your true life gives you the knowledge and techniques for creating boundaries in your life that help us to deal with family, as well as dealing with those narcissistic and toxic people in your life. It offers the insight into understanding and overcoming your self-esteem issues, and to begin to see for the first time your amazing value. You owe it to yourself to find the power within you. Hey guys, glad to be back. So today we're going to be talking about walking on eggshells and dealing with negative behavior. So let's begin talking about what constitutes negative behavior. Okay, well, the obvious constitutes negative behavior, yelling, screaming. There's certain negative behavior, though, if you are in a physically abusive relationship at this point, where you fear for your life, none of this that I'm going to talk about really has any bearing on that. Okay, so I'm not saying stick that out at all. Okay, what I'm saying is in that situation, if you can leave, you need to get out of that situation as soon as possible. And you need to find a safe place and leave that environment, because that environment is unhealthy, it's scary, and it could be your life. Okay, so that's not what I'm talking about. Obviously, that is negative behavior, but I'm not trying to talk about how we deal with that type of behavior. So understand that's the caveat for tonight. Okay, so if your life is in danger, or you feel as though your life is in danger, or you are being physically beaten, this is not what I'm discussing tonight. Okay, and so just so you understand. So the negative behavior that I'm going to be discussing tonight is lying, gaslighting, manipulating, creating fear, starting arguments, trying to control everything. Okay, when somebody tries to control everything, to me, that's a negative behavior. Now, we understand for some degree where this comes from, correct? When somebody usually is trying to control the situation, they feel out of control inside of themselves. Okay? So we understand that that's the case, is that when somebody's trying to control you, so example, many of you might have been raised in a family dynamic where mom or dad tried to control you, right? But if you look back at mom or dad's life, for the most part, their particular life was out of control, and they felt like they had no control. So if you're in a relationship right now and you are being controlled, this is definitely a negative behavior aspect. When people are being snide, making snide comments, accusatory. Okay, if you have a family member, a friend, a significant other who's accusing you of cheating constantly, and you're not, accusing you of lying constantly, and you're not. You know, a lot of times when you're accused constantly of doing something that you haven't done, what is our tendency of doing, right? What do we tend to do, okay? Well, we tend to over-explain how we are not a bad person. We tend to over-explain how we weren't cheating, how we didn't lie, how we weren't trying to be an ass, all that above, right? That's what we do. And what happens is that we try to over-explain, right? But the over-explanation is not accepted because the person's already believing what you're saying is not true anyway, because you've already been made guilty before innocent. And then you're kind of proving yourself, you're like basically digging yourself out of this like grave kind of thing. But the problem is that that's not the way to deal with this behavior. And we're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk more about that because we fall into the trap, right, of that over-explanation. We fall into the trap of trying to give them the information. We fall into the trap of trying to prove our value, okay? And that is like the big enchilada, is a lot of this is based on our historical record. Many of us got into these relationships, right? We got into these relationships and we got into them, right? Because why? We got into them for many different reasons. When you are in a relationship that you consider controlling, manipulative, overbearing, narcissistic, the list goes on. When you have entered into a relationship with somebody like that, it's historical record. Now, when you're raised with it, that's obvious, right? So, mom or dad were narcissists. Maybe mom or dad were dealing with borderline personality disorder. Maybe there was other issues that were going on as well. Maybe there was abuse, maybe there was neglect. And so remember that until we deal with the stuff that's from the beginning, we can't let go of that stuff. And so that leads into our adult life, and then that begins to spin into what we create our life to be. And so we're basically, even though we might not have known what was really dealing with mom or dad, we might not have had like a diagnosis or that kind of understanding, but we knew that we really didn't like the way we were treated. We knew that we felt that we were not ever heard. Maybe some of you out there felt like your brother or sister was the golden child and you were the stepchild, and even though you might have still been blood, you were that black sheep that was treated lesser than, subpar. So different levels. So what happens though is that when we go into these different types of relationships when we get older too, for some of you have been married to this, maybe you're engaged to it, you're dating, what have you, basically it's a pattern. Okay, so we're going to talk about this because a lot of times we don't know what we're dealing with. Also, another thing that I'm talking about as far as negative behavior is extreme, obtuse texting. So many of you out there, when you get in an argument with a family member or you get in the argument with your spouse, girlfriend, or boyfriend, there's like massive amounts of texting, like just lines and lines and lines of texting, and you're reading through this and you're trying to respond. That's also not the way that we want to respond to this type of negative behavior. Also, showing up and bringing the drama. Okay, that's another thing too. If you're dealing with someone that's constantly bringing drama to the table, you do not want to play into this. A lot of times it seems easier to play into the situation at hand. That's what we normally do, is that it seems easier to just comply. It seems easier to placate, right? It's easier to placate sometimes because we really just don't want to deal with it. We don't want to point out the obvious. We don't want to have an argument. We don't want to have a fight. But there's ways of doing this with slowing down the amount of argumentation and at least working to try to accelerate a better chance of making things happen. Another example of negative behavior. I didn't say bad behavior because bad is bad, but I'm talking about negative behavior. Behavior that is not conducive to positive growth. Behavior that does not help you to grow, to be a stronger person, better person, healthier person. It does not help you grow and to create unconditional love. Negative behavior. One example of this, another, is one person asking another person to cut out family members or friends. And so basically whittling this person down to being on their own by themselves just with this person. Again, why would anybody ask for that? Well, they ask for that because they want to have control. If you have no friends and you don't see any of your family, and you even cut off kids from a previous marriage, this person has basically sequestered you and has 24-hour consistent communication with you. That's control. And so any of those types of things, accusatory, angry, pushing your buttons, starting an argument, cussing you out, these types of things, all the things that do not make you feel good, all the things that add to your stress level, okay? So I think many of you out there know that you're probably pretty even people. To the most part, I think most people actually, struggle with codependency. Many of us struggle with codependency. Many of us struggle with self-identity and self-worth and self-value issues, okay? And so it's hard to not give in to these people. It's hard not to try to explain ourselves. It's hard not to placate. It's hard not to just go with the flow. It's hard not to take the brunt of the issue. It's hard not to be the one that has to explain. So when I return, we're going to talk about how we usually handle this, and then we're going to flip the script and talk about how we should handle this and how you can begin to implement this starting today. Oh, and by the way, real quick, we will be answering some questions toward the end of the show as well. And so if you have some questions on this, we will take a few questions tonight as well. So looking forward to hearing some great questions and answering them as best as possible. So we'll be back. I'll be back. Ashley Berges will be back here on this live broadcast in 2 shakes. Hey there, friends. I'm glad you're catching the live broadcast of Live Your True Life Perspectives. I've created my very own Patreon page. You can go to Patreon and you can check out my page. The link is right here. It's an amazing platform because I'm able to offer more stuff there, different stuff than I am on the Live Your True Life program, as well as on my YouTube channel. You've probably seen my YouTube channel. We put up new video content every week. And we have a lot of great content on there. But on the Patreon page, I'm able to go a step further. I'm offering group coaching sessions, private coaching sessions, as well as access to exclusive content, like the Celebrity Perspective, Season 1. I won a Telly Award for that this year. You can watch all episodes right here on Patreon. I'm offering you the exclusive chance to come on the radio with me, to be live on Live Your True Life Perspectives, nationally syndicated radio show, to talk about yourself, to talk about your amazing life, and to inspire the Live Your True Life listeners. When you become a member of my Patreon page, you are directly supporting me to help other people to live their true life. I look... Hey there, friends. Ashley Berges back. And today we've been talking about walking on eggshells, dealing with negative behavior. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what negative behavior is. I think you know that it's pretty self-explanatory. Also, the caveat about physical abuse is not connected with this type of behavior. That is behavior to leave, to take off, to run, not to stay. So we're talking about that behavior. We're talking about the argumentative behavior, the drama, pitch and fits, getting really angry, long text messaging, calling you, getting called out in front of other people, being made fun of, manipulation, gaslighting, accusing you of doing something you didn't do, and so the list kind of goes on. Asking you to cut out time with family and friends, whatever that looks like, asking you. I'm not really asking you, but saying, telling you to do certain things. All this constitutes negative behavior. Negative behavior, again, is behavior that does not enrich our lives. Negative behavior is behavior that doesn't push us forward to be a better human being, does not link us to unconditional love, doesn't help us. So that's what negative behavior, anything that doesn't feel good, you know what I'm saying, like anything that doesn't feel right, usually. And sometimes the problem is that we're in these relationships, and maybe it's a mother, maybe it's your mother, maybe it's your father, maybe it's your brother, sister. It could be that. It could also be someone you're dating. It could also be someone you're married to. But when we've been in it for long enough as we are, a lot of times we kind of just go with it because we just don't want to rock the boat. When I'm working with clients, a lot of times we'll be talking about how one person will say, hey, I just try to avoid the house. I just try to avoid the house as much as possible. I just try to work as much as I can, go home, do it all over again because I don't want to get in an argument. I don't want to get in a fight. I just don't want to deal with it. I just don't have the energy anymore to figure out how to do it. Okay, so I get that, but it's not going to change. The only way that situations change is if you change. Okay. And that's the biggest thing, too, is that a lot of people say, well, I want my significant other to change or I want this to change. Well, we could be waiting all day and for the rest of our life for them to change. Okay? The only person that we have control of is ourselves. I can only control myself. I can't control my husband. Okay? I can't control my mother or my father, my grandmother, my grandfather, any of that. I can't. But I can control my actions. I can work on dealing with my emotions. I can properly unpack those emotions and understand from whence I came. And then I can understand how to process that and how to not react, but how to respond and respond only when it's necessarily needed for my response. Okay. So let's talk about that. Usually how we handle these situations is we placate them. We allow them to do whatever they want. We give in to them, because we don't want the argument. But I want to ask you, the last time you gave in to them and you gave in to their bad behavior, didn't you get more bad behavior? Okay? It doesn't end the bad behavior. It actually encourages the bad behavior. And let me give you an example. when you're dealing with a child, and I know that many of you probably have children, many of you might have grown children, maybe some of you have very young children. When you have children, you got to train them and teach them very early. First off, I mean, if you're coming from a good, positive environment, you know, what is expected, and then better yet, how you want them to act. So a good example is when you go into the store and you're pushing the cart, you're at the Target and you're grabbing the stuff that you need and you're putting it into the cart. You have to show by example what you will and won't accept from them. So them trying to grab a stuffed animal, you know, out of the aisle and pulling it down and grabbing it, okay, you know, that's in and of itself is not great, but in and of itself is what kids do. And then you say, okay, well, that's not ours. We're going to put it back. Okay, this isn't yours. We're going to put it back. Now, what happens is that child is probably going to get pretty upset about the fact that child had teddy bear, holding teddy bear that wasn't said teddy bear, wasn't their teddy bear, and now the parent has taken and put the teddy bear back on the shelf, and so the child's probably going to have a little bit of a conniption fit, right? But the thing is that the very first time this happens is how we have to train. So what we've dealt with a lot of times in relationships is we keep letting them take the bear, because when we pull it away and they start crying and screaming, we go, oh God, here, take the bear, just take it. Take it and shut up, you know what I mean? I just don't want to deal with this anymore. That's what we're doing in our relationships. So even though we let them take the proverbial bear, okay, so in this situation, it's not a stuffed bear, right? In these situations, it's you let them get away with talking down to you. You let them gaslight you. You let them get away with accusing you of cheating. You let them get away with accusing you of lying. You agreed to get rid of something from like a friend, or you agreed to get rid of your Instagram, or you agreed to get rid of your Facebook for them. Okay, it's happened. You've done it. You know, we've already laid the tracks, right? Now we just got to change up the modus operandi. So even though we can't go back and change the initial situation that started all this off, we can begin to make changes now. Now the difference between, so some of you might start saying, wow, okay, this is starting to sound like boundaries. The difference between executing the very first time, the bear, okay, the bear, child pulls bear off at the aisle, grabs it, you grab the bear, okay, that's not yours, okay, let's put bear back. There's that cry, you go, okay, calm down, you know, it wasn't yours, that's not the way we operate here. You leave the store, you've taught the lesson. Okay, so even though we didn't do that initially in this relationship, we're gonna pull the tracks and we're gonna change it up. Okay, we're gonna change it. But the thing is that because we didn't do it in the beginning, we have to be mega consistent from here on out. Because basically what we're creating is we're basically creating a new way of life. It's like we're putting down new laws, but we're not saying anything about it. Okay, we're not sitting there saying, hey, we will not do this, and I am not going to listen to you to do this, and I have stopped over explaining to you, and by the way, I've written up a constitution of things I will and won't do. No. We have to initiate slowly, consistently, and thoughtfully in order to make this a true reality. Okay, so we have to change our dynamic of giving in. We have to change our dynamic of placating, right? Because what has really happened when you've placated them? Nothing good has happened out of it. Nothing came your way. It wasn't like good things happened because you gave in. Maybe you got a little crumb of validation from them because you gave away some good friends that you won't ever be able to see. Or maybe you got some validation because you got rid of your Instagram page because he was very jealous of the fact that there might have been some guys on your Instagram page that you've never met in your life and they live in another country, but that was the spur on of why, you know, based on abandonment issues and the fact that, you know, there's a bunch of jealousy there, that's why you had to eliminate your Instagram page. So there's a lot of things that y'all might have to reinstate coming back later, but you don't do it all at one time. Okay, that's just not the way you do it. It's like when somebody says, hey, I want to quit eating beef, I want to quit doing drugs, I want to quit smoking cigarettes. Oh, and by the way, I want to quit drinking. It's like, okay. First do the drugs, and then you go backwards. You don't do all things at one time. Just like we're not going to reinvent everything and put it all back. We're going to slowly, incrementally create this leadership tactic that I have figured out how to manifest. And then we're going to do that over a long period of time. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. We're also going to answer some questions because I think that, you know, we can all learn from one another, especially when it's real life questions and it's stuff that really hits home for a lot of us. I think that can be very powerful. So if you're going through a situation right now that you have some questions on, you can definitely ask me. Go on and put that in the feed. Rodrigo is going to be looking through that here in just a bit after I kind of talk about a little bit of the rest of it, and then we'll answer some of those questions. So I look forward to hearing your questions, and I got to figure out a way that I can also see him too, but he's seeing all of them, so we got that figured out, and we're going to rock and roll from there. So we'll be back here, Ashley Berges' live stream feed here on, we'll be live, and we'll be back here in just a couple of seconds. Hey friends, Ashley Berges back. And we've been talking about walking on eggshells, dealing with negative behavior. And right now I want to talk about how we deal with it. Because normally what we're doing is we're placating, we're giving in, we're jumping in, we're wrenching up. So like when there's an argument and they start an argument with us, and we can only keep our cool for so long, and then we start wrenching up, and they don't know how to stop because that's not part of their MO, like there's no stop button, right? But we have a stop button. They do too, but we're not trying to figure out how to find their stop button. We got to find ours. We want to respond, but we don't want to react, okay? So you've got to begin to take the role of the leader, okay? There's not two followers running around. There's not two people just running around like crazy. You've got to take the role of the leader. And the only way that you can do that is to put up and say, I am not putting up with any of this, okay? And it's not like you're going to go and tell them that, but the way that you respond and the way that you handle things shows the fact that you're not, okay? So we're not giving in to bad behavior. So the next time that, let's say for example, let me get a good example here. Okay. So like the accusatory thing. So let's just say that you're at home and you're being accused of sleeping around, and you've never slept around in the marriage period. It's not the thing you do. And so not only is the person accusing you of sleeping around hurts your feelings, it's also a lie, but it also makes you feel bad, right? So it's already kind of a bad situation, 0 for 3 at that point. So usually what happens is, right, we respond with very angrily, or we respond with, you have no idea, or I'm so tired of this crap, whatever we're responding, usually it wrenches up, right? Or you get pretty sad, you kind of turn the sword on yourself, and it doesn't get any better. So in these situations, we only respond back with the highest of ethics, and we only respond back with the way that we want to respond back based on our truth. So when somebody is honest, and they haven't cheated, the normal response is not to over-explain, because there's nothing to over-explain. Okay, there's nothing else to say. No, I didn't cheat. I don't know where this is coming from. I didn't. Okay, 1, what you're saying is defamation. 2, I do not like the way that you're treating me. And 3, this is not what I signed up for. So what's happening is that we want to actually stop the communication like that in its tracks, and we do not want to add fuel to the fire. The last thing that you want to be doing is screaming and yelling, getting in a screaming match, or even more, trying to explain yourself to your blue in the face, and that they keep asking for more and more evidence that you don't have because you weren't involved, okay? Another example I want to give you is these massive accusatory text messages on your phone. So when you had an argument, and you're getting this massive accusatory text, and it's all in capitals, all in caps, and everything's caps, and there's paragraph forms, and ding, 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 and it keeps coming in. I don't want you to continue to read these texts, okay? Because you know what these texts are about. You know that it's probably gaslighting. It's angry texts. You know that this is not texts that are made to make you feel good about yourself, right? So why do we read them? A leader's not going to read this crap because they don't need it, okay? I don't need to hear about how bad I am and how bad you feel I am in this argument. And I'm not going to respond to that, okay? Because I want to flip the script, because I want you to really think about that. Many of us deal with this stuff when it comes to family members like mothers and fathers that are very close, siblings, or significant others, okay? We normally don't take this from other people. I mean, many of you will take crap from your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend that you would never accept from someone else, okay? Would you accept this type of response from your friend? Paragraphs of stuff, all uppercase, talking about how horrible you are? Okay, you're not going to respond to that. You're not going to do it. So I'm not saying block, because block is asinine, okay? We're not blocking anybody. We're just not responding. And if we do respond, we respond in a calm way. I don't agree. I don't see your perspective. Thank you. Okay, and I would never thank anybody for telling me that I'm an ass or I'm a bad person. So I would never thank anybody for lying about me or accusing me. But what I would say is I would respond back, I will get back with you when you're calm. I will respond back when you calm down. I will respond back when you take a breath and you decide to calm down. Or I don't respond because I do not want to give in to that poor behavior. Okay. Another thing too is that when somebody is trying to roll all over you and run all over you, as far as you have, like, let's say like you have to get up early in the morning and you're dating someone that is constantly calling and coming over late night, you've got to create those boundaries from the leadership role, the things that you will and won't deal with. And basically what you're doing here is you're actually showing the other person that you actually deserve respect, and you're not asking them to respect you. You're not saying, oh, please respect me, please show me respect, please stop treating me like this. It's more like, I will be treated like this, and this is the way I will be treated. And so I am only going to respond and communicate when I feel like I'm being heard, I'm being respected, and I'm being shown consideration. Okay, and I'm not talking about pedestal here. I'm not talking about, somebody over there, oh God, you're so awesome, you're almighty. No, I'm talking about just general respect and a way of dealing with somebody in a humanitarian way. Okay, I think most of you who might be in some toxic relationships right now, there is not humanitarian conversation. There was a lot of arguments. There was a lot of manipulation. One of the things is the gaslighting too, is you need to be aware of when somebody is trying to gaslight you, you need to understand what that means. You need to understand where that comes from and how it begins. Okay, so if there's a situation that comes about and you ask somebody a question, and they don't want to answer that question, or maybe they're guilty of something, or maybe if they answer that question, they have to take some sort of responsibility for their actions, or they have to say, I apologize, which they're probably not going to do because they're going to flip the script, and they're going to tell you about something about how bad you are. By the way, your kids don't like you. By the way, last night when we were at your friend's house, they don't like you. They were talking behind your back. Whatever it is that they're going to gaslight you about, they're going to gaslight you to take the spotlight off of them. And in those situations when somebody is gaslighting you or using manipulation, do not play into that hand. To continue to have an argument, it's null and void, because what's happened here is that the person that you're wanting to take responsibility for their actions is not going to do it. They're basically throwing it back at you, and then you continue to argue about the other issue that they're gaslighting you on, when that has no bearing whatsoever, and it's really not true. I'm sure your kids love you, and I'm sure your friends really think you're awesome, right? So all of that is BS as well. So I want you to also kind of step back. If you've been playing this game for a long time, whether with the same person or in multiple relationships in this cycle that we call life, it could be second nature. And so it's going to take a lot of time to step back and really see the reality of the situation, okay? But you've got to start looking at who you are, what's important to you, what are the things in your relationship that's happening that does not make you feel good, and you've got to stop placating and giving into that, because that's taking away from your quality of life, and that's taking away who you are and your value, and it's not making you feel good. The whole purpose of life is to find yourself, to understand yourself, to be able to work on these past wounds that we have as children. Most of us were not raised in harmonious, healthy families. We just weren't. And it's not cool. I mean, yes, I wish everybody had been raised in an amazing family. I wish I had been raised in a great, harmonious, perfect family. That would have been awesome. It didn't happen. And so instead of continuing these cycles predicated by the beginning, we've got to work on ending them. Okay? And it begins with us. The buck stops here once we figure out who we are. So this exercise is there to begin to basically lift you up a little bit on that mountain to see, okay, what do I stand for? Who am I? What do I stand for? And what am I giving into in this relationship that's taking away from my identity, taking away from my beliefs, values, and morals, and what can I do? And I'm not talking about standing up and having a fight. I'm not talking about having a shout out. I'm talking about standing up for the belief. And so if somebody's gaslighting, I'm not going to continue the conversation. And if they do that, hey, okay, I see what's happening here. I asked you a question. You're going to deflect it. You're going to lie. You're going to basically gaslight me on this situation, make me feel bad about something that's not true. Let's communicate later on when you're willing to be honest and you're going to be authentic. Okay, and you don't sit there and you keep arguing. You don't argue. You just, hey, I'll be back. I'm gonna go take a run, or I'm gonna do something for me. I'm gonna take care of me. And there's a lot more examples we can give. I wanna thank Aaron L. Aaron, thank you so much for helping us tonight. Everything that Aaron, I really appreciate you, because you actually know what it goes into doing this kind of stuff and creating this content and the work involved, and I really appreciate it. So Aaron, if you have a question tonight, I definitely want to answer that question. First off, if you have a question, and let's go into some of those questions. Rodrigo, did Aaron have a question tonight yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Do you have one from Nadia Bashar?
Okay, Nadia.
She said, can an abuser change?
Is there a specific type of abuser?
No, that's just
Okay. Well, Nadia, abusers, all abusers can only change if they actually seek change and seek help. There has to be an epiphany of a change. There has to be a reason for them to change. They have to know another way. They have to see another way. Not all abusers, but most abusers came from abusive households, right? They mimic what they saw. And so if that is so ingrained and they haven't gotten help from a therapist to really work on this, they're probably not going to change. And the only reason why we change, right, is because why do we change anything? So let me give you an example. Why does a business change the way that they produce an item? So let's say that they're producing an item, in a warehouse, and it's an item that you use in the kitchen, right? Why would they change that type of protocol? They would only change that protocol to make it better because they've seen other options, because they've been introduced to something new, because they believe that this is better, because it's better for the good. If they don't know that they need to change, or they don't have the skill set or the tools to understand how to change, the change is not going to happen. And so what I would suggest in that situation is, hoping and helping them to seek that it's probably a historical reference for the reason why they are the way they are, but offering them help to get some help and providing some information. But if they're not willing to drink the water, there's not much you can do. And I don't mean to be doomsday. And Rodrigo, when he told me that this was the first question, I was like, oh, I didn't want to be doomsday. But unless somebody works with somebody to see why it started in the beginning and why they use this as a defense mechanism and why they actually employ this, and then explain how to let this go, and then give them another construct to live and work with them consistently, so that it's because when we do things for long enough, we're on autopilot. So we have to switch that up. So if they're willing to get help and they're willing to work on themselves, I believe they can. But if not, I don't believe that there's room for them to do it. I hope that answers your question. Next question?
The next one was from Brett Dorncap. It says, what happens when the abused becomes the abuser? Is that common?
Brett, great question. Great question. What happens when the abused becomes the abuser? Is that what you asked? Okay, so what happens when the abused becomes the abuser? Well, this is normal. Okay, that's what I was just talking about. This is normal. When we get abused over a period of time, right, that becomes commonplace. That becomes what we're used to. And a lot of times when we're abused, right, what do we feel? We feel insignificant, we feel small, we feel sad, we feel overwhelmed. We feel mistreated. We feel neglected. We feel that nobody loves us. We feel like we're a bad person. How could we be a good person and still be treated like this? Many men that have been treated badly by women in a string of cycles. Many women who have been treated badly by men in a string of cycles. This happens. And so we have to step back, because we have to realize, where did it begin? Did it begin with our dynamic with our parents and the way we were raised, which it probably was, and then we followed in with a cycle of other toxicity when it came to that same dynamic. Now, the only way that we can stop this cycle is to realize who are the players in the cycle, how you were directed toward that from the energy, from the being raised by that family dynamic, and also realizing that when we give in to that and we become the abuser, we're allowing those people to manipulate us. We've allowed those people who have treated us horribly to actually get in the way of our happiness. We've actually allowed them to become our ruler, and we are no longer being ruled by our own. Okay, so what we have to step back as we have to say, okay, what happened in these previous relationships? We have to unpack that information. We cannot have any contact anymore with that toxicity in our life. And then we have to begin to realize that what we're doing is that we're scared. Because when we get to a place of being abusive to other people, probably vocal as far as verbally abusive, we're acting out because when we, in our past, when we have been at good behavior, we got bad behavior back. Okay? So we've been kind of trained, and we become where we're going to give out the bad behavior. Do you see what I'm saying? So unfortunately, you were surrounded by people that didn't see your goodness. However, the reason why you stayed in those relationships is based on codependency and historical record. So at this point, it is cutting all contact from toxicity in your life and then working forward to actually go through and unpack the information, unpack the anger, the sadness, the abuse. We rectify with that. We work through that. We understand the situation fully. We see exactly the stuff that we understand how it wasn't you, it wasn't your fault. And usually these people are very abusive. They're gaslighting you, they're manipulating you, and they're telling you things to keep you under their thumb. Okay? Because if they abuse you enough and you lose yourself and you keep coming back toward them, then you become basically their minion. And so in that situation, so what we need to do is just work on that, unpacking that, and then beginning to let that go, getting right with that, forgiving yourself from being in that relationship. And then we work to power you up from the inside out. And it can be done very successfully, especially when you catch it early. I hope this answer has helped.
Aaron does actually have a question. It was, what does it mean when you try and have a constructive conversation with someone and they get stuck on a detail or constantly get flustered or hostile mid-conversation?
Okay, Aaron asked, so when you're trying to have a constructive, positive conversation with somebody and you're trying to talk about some big thing and then they get caught up in a detail, is that how do you deal with that?
They get stuck on detail or constantly get flustered or hostile mid-conversation.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, usually the reason for that is the person doesn't really want to talk about whatever this is. Because remember, we can only have a constructive conversation with two people that are willing to be constructive. Unfortunately, what's happening here is whatever you're bringing up in that conversation is causing that person to feel insecure. It's causing that person to feel scared. It's causing that person to feel as if so if somebody's not willing to take responsibility for their actions and you're bringing up something that they've done that you're not happy about, I'm just giving that example, and they're not willing to take responsibility, then they're going to try to stop you at every corner of that conversation because it's just more and more of stuff that they don't want to deal with. Perhaps it could be communicated differently. But what I found is that when somebody's getting caught up in a detail and we can't get past that, that's derailing the conversation on purpose. So that's what I call derailment. And derailment is done to just exactly what it means, to derail you from this conversation because they don't want to have it. So maybe there's another way of pursuing the conversation. Maybe there's a way of stating it where it's non-accusatory. Maybe they feel like you're accusing them. And so maybe if you start the conversation in a different way, maybe that can get over the accusatory feeling. If I had specifics, I could definitely probably walk you through it. But I feel that that's part of it. So when somebody's getting hooked on that, they're obsessing over that. That's a sign that they're just kind of trying to derail the situation, or they're trying to nitpick and basically trying to turn the conversation so that you get onto that little comment or that little speck of whatever, and then the conversation changes. The big issue, the big meat goes over here and gets hidden, and then y'all are talking about this little detail here, and then eventually the conversation ends because you feel like you're blue in the face and nothing gets solved. I hope this helps.
Another question? It's from Silver Storm. Why is my partner drawn to toxic friends? Is there such thing as co-narcissists, codependent to toxic people only?
Okay, so who's Silver
Storm.
Silver Storm? Okay, Silver Storm, so they're asking what?
Why is my partner drawn to toxic friends?
Okay.
Is there such thing as a co-narcissist? Like they're codependent to toxic people only.
Okay, so why are they drawn to toxic friends? Interesting. Interesting. So they're constantly drawn to toxic friends. That's interesting. Is there any more information on that?
No, that's all he put.
Well, it kind of depends on what toxicity it is. You know, are they drawn to people that are narcissistic? Are they drawn to somebody that's has the toxicity as far as is under the influence, out of control? It kind of depends. There's a lot of questions there, because I don't know if they're telling you that they're toxic and kind of using that as a jumping board to explain bad behavior. Like, I wouldn't have done this, but so and so is always doing this, and this is always happening. Because I'm wondering how you know that they're toxic, unless it just consistently you're dealing with the aftermath of sad things or negative things happening to your partner. And in that case, just like we're drawn to certain people in relationships, we're drawn to certain friendships. This might be the only type of friendships your partner knows. Okay? And this is the type of people that they're drawn to because that's what they're used to. You know, another thing could be that, you know, I mean, I think that's really kind of the case in the sentiments. If I had more information, I could really kind of give you more. But I'm thinking when people are, just like any sort of relationship, when people are drawn to that, no matter if it's a friend or a spouse or soon-to-be spouse or any of that, we're drawn to what we know. We're drawn to what we feel like we kind of, what we bring to ourselves. So the things within us. So for example, if I fear abandonment, okay, this is a really good example and it kind of explains stuff. If I fear abandonment inside, and so every time I meet somebody, I go, God, I hope they don't leave me. I hope they don't leave me. Oh my God. When I meet people, I'm going to be more drawn to people who either have abandonment issues themselves, or I'm going to be more drawn to people who are going to turn around and abandon me. Do you see how that works? So when we're connected to toxic people, whatever toxicity that is, it could be within us, or it could be the opposite of. Do you see what I'm saying? So maybe he feels like he's not ever going to have friends or make friends, and so therefore he's always making friends with these toxic people who are eventually going to hurt him. And maybe somewhere in the back of his head, somewhere in his subconscious or conscious, he feels like his friends are always going to leave him, and so he seems to pick the wrong people because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That could be it. There's multiple other layers to that too, but definitely I think it's something that he is either a cycle, it's a known cycle, it's something that's really normal to him, or it's something within him that he's thinking and he's bringing the similar or the opposite to him. Any other questions? Any other questions? Gotta have a little fun, guys. Gotta laugh a little bit. It's life, you know. We gotta have fun. Even though life is tough and challenging sometimes, when we have the answers to the questions, it's helpful. When we're able to vocalize our thoughts, it's helpful. Remember, keeping all that in is not good for us, right? It's not good. It doesn't help us. It doesn't aid and abet. But you only want to really talk with people that you know will keep your confidence and is there for you. And you also want to remember, too, when we do talk to family and friends about some of these issues that aren't about them, right? but they know the people involved, remember, they also have something too to gain or to lose, right? So remember that. So be careful, because when you're talking to somebody, you need to have somebody that has a very neutral thought process and somebody that's neutral, that gains nothing from you choosing this or nothing from you getting rid of that, right? So that's part of it too. So being careful who you speak with about it, and somebody that has nothing to gain one way or another. Rodrigo, is there another question?
Yeah, from Summer Miles. She asked, is it possible for a narcissist with BPD to heal and stop the cycle?
And what was the name?
Summer Miles.
Summer. Okay, great question. Is someone with narcissism with borderline traits, will they be able to heal?
And stop the cycle?
And stop the cycle. Great question. Will somebody with narcissism with borderline traits be able to heal and stop the cycle? Yes. However, big caveat. Okay, just like anything else. The only way that we can stop the cycle is to realize that we're part of the cycle. The only way to make the change is to take responsibility for our actions. And in this situation, we actually have to work to change our mode of operandi. So if somebody's narcissist with borderline traits or borderline with narcissist traits, we have to take the time to unpack that baggage. We have to work with a therapist and understand. A lot of people use DBT therapy. There's other different types of therapy that can be used, but we have to stop the autopilot. Okay, because in these situations, the way that somebody will argue, the way that somebody will defend, the thoughts, the subconscious thoughts, that negative broken record has to be worked through. Because if it's really not worked through, we go back on autopilot, we react, we respond, we accuse, right? We fear abandonment, and then we respond from that. We fear abandonment, and we respond with control. You see how all this happens. So if we don't realize why, first off, we respond that way, we can't change it. If we don't realize another way of responding, we have no other thing to go to. So yes, Summer, can they change? Yes. And I have seen people that have really worked and worked really hard, and they have changed, and they work every day to do it. Just like any of us working on whatever we're working on, being consistent, being mindful, and focusing on that change. And yes, with that determination and that belief and working with somebody, you can go so far, you can make so many changes, but it takes to revert. We got to stop the cycle, because there's a reason why we create this. Yes. Is some of it genetic? Yes. But is a lot of it environmental and learned? Yes. Okay, how much of it is one way or another? I can't say that right here. But remember, for the most part, this is a coping mechanism. It's a defense mechanism. It's what we do to get through whatever was happening prior. Okay, and so realizing that and understanding that that way of living doesn't work, and we're willing to make changes, that's the beginning. Then following through and working every day to make changes, being conscientious, not going into autopilot, stopping before we're accusatory, stopping before we have this control issue, and really working and really focusing on that to getting better. And yes, if it can be done, I've seen it done. That's a great question, because all of us can heal. We just have to know what's ailing us, find out, what we need to do with it, work on the healing process, and realize it's not for a day, it's not for a month, but it's a lifetime choice. And we all have that choice to make changes in our life. Great question. Are we good? Okay, so we're great night tonight. If y'all have any questions, just go on ashleyberges.com, click on that contact page. You can send me a message. Go to ashleyberges.com. Click on that contact page. Do you want to put that in the, Rodrigo, do you want to put that in there? Just put www.ashleyberges.com and see if it'll come up there for everybody. So then you can do that as well. I also have another email, coachberges@gmail.com, and that should work too. And I can, I want to hear from you. Just send me a message. If you'd like to work with me, that's great. I do take on and work with clients privately. If you have any questions, I'll answer as many as possible. I do get a lot, but I do want to pay attention to those and help in any way. So I'm glad that you've watched this. Please share it with your family and friends. Share the channel with your family and friends. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel good because it knows I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and I'm really happy about putting out this content, and I'm really happy connecting with you and learning more about you in any way that I can help as well. Also, if this video you like it, give us a like. And any other questions that you have on here, I'll go back and look at the live feed here tomorrow, and we can all, and I can add or comment, or Rodrigo can do it as well too. So we'll get some stuff done. So I hope this has helped you, and in the meantime, have a great night or have a great morning or whatever time of the day or night it is. And don't forget that we can make choices today to change our life. And if we do the right thing by ourselves and do the right thing by other people, as far as, unconditional love, of really pushing the needle forward and doing the right thing, standing up for our values, beliefs, and morals, we can really get to where we want to go, and we don't, we keep ourselves intact, and we begin to find our true self. So don't forget, by the way, I'm going to say this, don't forget to live your true life. We'll be back this time next week. We're going to do about the same time, maybe a little bit earlier. And so please don't forget to tune into the live. We'll have a new video coming up here in just a few days on the YouTube channel. And that should be a good video as well. And don't forget to live your true life. And we'll be back next Tuesday. And guess what? Ashley Berges will be back on the live show in 3 shakes.